Good morning, everybody. We were joking about having walkout music to come down, but I think the video has served its purpose there, so I think we're all excited. I'm Kodiak. I'm from Nielsen Sports, who work with a lot of brands, some in this room to measure and select and optimize sports sponsorships specifically, and joined by some great panelists today. I'm going to read some introductions to make sure I get everything right, because they're quite impressive. But starting here with Joel. Joel is the Vice President of Direct to Consumer for Legal Shield. He's a veteran e-commerce and digital marketer, leader across a variety of verticals, including consumer wellness, health and wellness, apparel, SaaS, luxury, and legal services. So, Joel, thanks for joining us today. Larisa serves as the Chief Growth Officer at Ziebart International Corporation. It's the largest franchise automotive appearance protection brand geared towards bringing back new car feel to thousands of drivers every day. Rob helps internationally growing direct-to-consumer wellness, online marketplace, and consumer packaged goods businesses establish and grow their brands and teams in emerging markets, helping them drive record revenue. He was most recently the CMO for Care Preventative, and has led marketing teams at Realtor.com, Smile Direct Club, and KitchenAid. And Jaime leads the first ever digital consumer experience and e-commerce D2C business for Kellanova US. With a goal for delivering value-driven consumer experiences that accelerate brand growth. So quite an impressive panel here today. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to start by just talking about some of your most favorite collaborations and successful sponsorships that you've worked with. So whoever wants to start, feel free to jump in.
Testing. All right, let's go. I'm here to talk about Pop-Tarts. Very proud. I was at the last event too, so I'm hopefully going to share a little bit more about what's happened since our last time that we got to talk together. But something our team is incredibly proud of, and I am one of many up here today representing this, our Pop-Tarts Bowl game last year. We are one of 43 competing in the bowl space, college football, and the Pop-Tarts team just absolutely smashed it last year. We really looked through the lens of every single college football ritual and thought about how do we apply that to our brand through the lens of our brand assets and our brand distinctiveness. So looking at, our food, our foil packets, the toaster, everything that goes with Pop-Tarts. And the team just came out with such a great spin on, a lot of people show up to these games with their mascots, or they turn their food into a mascot, and we did the reverse, right? So we actually made our mascot edible, and it really stole the show. We had, I think, over 81% of conversations during bowl game were around mascots, and Pop-Tarts was really at the helm of that. So that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about more today. It was a really cool program. And we ended up winning a Cannes Award this year, which is shocking for a CPG company. I think we can all be really proud of that. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go.
I can go while the mic is live. Perfect timing with the UT folks that are here. When I was with Realtor, essentially this time last year, we, Realtor.com rentals team did a sports marketing partnership with the Longhorns football team. So we kicked off the season, we're presenting sponsor, and it had a massive impact. So we sponsored throughout the football season, did in-stadium logos, engagements, and then went on to sponsor men's and women's basketball as well. I'll talk a bit more about, I think, as we go, but just some of the high-level results. We saw a nearly 40% increase on our UUs and visitors to our site, and as an online marketplace, that's the goal that we're going for. It was a geo-focused campaign. We were really laser-focused in the Austin and Houston markets, and we saw an 8-point brand awareness increase there. And then being a dual-sided marketplace, we need communities, we needed rental properties, we needed management companies on the site, and we saw over 140% increase on our properties and committed contracts to the site. So a massive partnership. The Longhorns were a fantastic partner, and I'll share some more about that. But it was a really great kickoff for the rentals business.
Awesome, Tess. Excellent. Hi. Larisa Walega, Chief Growth Officer with Ziebart International Corporation. Thank you so much for having me. Finally was able to join this group after a couple of years. Big heart for the Detroit Pistons. My first internship was with the Palace Sports and Entertainment group. So love the organization, and it's a part of who I am. I'm excited today to be here to talk a little bit about, I'm a little bit different than most of the brands here in that I'm a franchise as well. So any decision that I make when it comes to sports marketing, influencer marketing, it's not just about creating a conversation with consumers, but it's also about creating an investment opportunity for franchise owners. So when we talk about this program that we launched last year, it was right connected to the draft here in Detroit. We were celebrating and continue to celebrate this year our 65th anniversary, and so we partnered in collegiate sports, specifically in football. We're launching actually our first national campaign in over 25 years on Monday, so a lot of great things are about to happen for our brand, but a lot of stories to tell around the connection of storytelling and talking about the partnerships that you create, the people that you connect with. Where is the story? Where is the connection? And how can you make sure that you can continue conversations? So excited to talk a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Cool. Joel Layton, head of D2C, Vice President of D2C for Legal Shield. Prior to that, I was the head of marketing and digital for Shinola. So I'm looking to share some interesting influencing work that we did with both some NBA folks and some NHL folks as well. And then when I think of Legal Shield, as I'm trying to pull us back into sports marketing, I look back, the company's 50 years old. In the early stages, we partnered with the likes of Fran Tarkington and Roger Staubach, which was, there was no social media at that time, but we were able to leverage the power of sports and the community that it brings. And, there's been around for quite a while doing different things. Looking forward to sharing those thoughts.
Awesome, thank you. Rob, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit about sponsorship selection. Could you tell us a little bit about that and specifically with the Longhorns?
Yeah, Longhorns were a great partner for this. I think the three things that we were really focused on was we had an incredibly fast turnaround for this partnership, and I think one of the key things when you're entering into one of these is to be really transparent with both your budget and your timing. There might be some gasp in the room, but we had 4 weeks, and we knew that. We had a whole brand strategy launching on our side, and we were seeking out a partner somewhere in the state of Texas. Thankfully, it's a large state, and we needed someone to execute with us in a 4-week time frame. It worked out perfectly that the Longhorns didn't have a presenting sponsor for what I think was one of the opening season games, and so we were able to quickly fit into that. But you need to be looking for partners that can execute on the timelines that you need, and they were fantastic. We did a stadium-wide logo takeover, and we had our logos everywhere, and they were able to quickly execute against that. We did an on-field activation and put our logo essentially almost across the entire end zone and had a game during one of the quarters, and it was really a fantastic experience. So I think timing, expectations, budget, you got to be upfront and clear about that. The other one is bring them in like an in-house partner. I think sometimes we get nervous of like, oh, if we tell them too much, it's going to just drive the budget up, or they're going to run crazy with that. They know their property better than we do, and so we need to come to them with full transparency of, hey, these are the problems we're trying to solve, and this is where we really need your support to help us get to that, get across the line. They know the storylines that they're working on in other places, and how can we as a brand be a part of that? And that was really important for us. And the final one, it seems obvious, but be really clear on your quantifiable goals that you need to drive. I mean, I shared the goals that we surpassed and we're excited for delivering, but they need to know so that every member of that team that's executing against that program knows why this is important, what you need to get out of it, because there could be additional levers that you're not aware of. With the Longhorns, it was part of their TV network. That's what really brought us across the line with them that other programs in Texas just simply couldn't offer, is that we were getting distribution both digitally, on television, radio, that other programs couldn't give us that reach. And then it also helped us, because we're obviously trying to acquire properties across the country. That gave us logo placements in nationally televised games. We had a touchdown catch with our logo on the digital banner in the end zone. And those are the moments that you can't coordinate or pay for, but it worked out perfectly. So those are the three that we were really focused on. And yeah, the Longhorns were a great partner to help bring that to life for us. The kind of cherry on the top of this was, for us, it was an awareness driving exercise. And so we wanted to make sure people knew that Realtor.com had rentals, and we had them in Austin. And one of the on-field activity that we did was to give away free rent for a year to someone who could throw a pass onto our logo. And that's the 9th largest stadium in the world. And so when you're on the 20-yard line with a big goofy check and they hear free rent for a year and 102,000 people go, ooh, you're like, okay, I think we've hit the awareness goal and driving, impressions that we have rentals here in Austin. So it was really a great cherry on top. And to give a student free rent for a year was an incredible an output of that activation too. So, yeah.
Truly amazing. It's awesome. Jaime, I'm going to come to you with this question. I remember watching the bowl game last year and thinking, are these football players really eating this Pop-Tart? It was incredible. Could you talk a little bit about that creative process, and is there anything you think other brands might be able to take away from that?
Being on this journey with the company, with the agencies, has been really amazing. So taking a step back, just thinking about creative effectiveness, it's something we continue to talk about as a company because it has been challenged over the years, right? With so much advancement in technology, and we're so smart around digital effectiveness now, can we outsmart it? How creative does creative actually really need to be? And when we looked back, so Scott Galloway, who's an industry leader in marketing, spoke at Cannes last year and said the era of brand is over. And for us brand marketers, I've been in brand marketing for almost 20 years. It's soul crushing to hear that because like the Pistons, right? Like we're so proud of these brands, and that's what consumers love about them. And data continues to show that creative is the second most important factor when you look at ROI. So as a company, we really continue to lean into that, and that's what makes the Pop-Tarts Bowl so incredibly special and unique. We took that vantage point and said, how do we make sure that not just the fans of football, but Pop-Tarts fans can really engage in this game, even if they don't love the matchup, right? You get to the end of the bowl game, you're like, my team didn't make it, or it's not the one that I was hoping for. But we really wanted an experience. And so there's just a few key principles that the team really thought about as they headed into that. So, one of the big ones was the team created a North Star from the very beginning, which was, what are we here for and what do we want to accomplish? And it was very much focused on exactly what I just said. Like, we want to give these fans the best experience, whether they're football fans or they're Pop-Tart fans. Like, how do we engage them? So to your point, like, you want the ooh moments, right, at these games. And so what the team did was really put everything through that lens. And they started to think through not just one moment, but all the different moments that you can create around that. So don't get hung up on that one thing. And you mentioned multiple things too, right? So we had the edible Pop-Tart, which we hoped would be wildly successful, but we didn't know. You can't brief and give me a viral activation, right? All of us marketers would love that. Exactly. So we had the edible mascot. My team executed a Pop-Tarts activation where consumers could bid on like which props are the brand going to bring to the event. We collected over $1 million worth of 1P data, which is a large part of what my team does. But nobody talks about that, right? Except for us. We had our away from home team there as well in the concession stands. They actually put together really cool Pop-Tart food combinations for fans. So they had Pop-Tarts with different ice cream combinations, completely sold out at the stadium. So really thinking about all the different touch points that you can create, because they're all going to impact your creative effectiveness at the end of the day and the impact that you're creating for the fans and the experience that you're offering to them. So as I stand here today as a brand lead, please do not give up on creative effectiveness. It's so important to the overall success. You can drive efficiencies all day in your media buys and with placements and things like that, but the idea itself is so critical to our success. And some of you may have watched the Unfrosted movie that came out a few months after the bowl game. That was really sparked by the fandom, the fan love that was going on around Pop-Tarts. Jerry came and was like, holy cow, Pop-Tarts is having a moment and we need to be here for it, right? So that creativity just continues to spiral and move forward even beyond that game and that moment.
Feel free, if anybody wants to jump in on any of these questions, more than welcome to. Larisa and Rob talked about budget and timeline being a large deciding factor in selecting sponsorships. We, in our conversation yesterday, talked about your draft sponsorship with your players and your investment level maybe not being to the likes of potentially a Kellanova or something along those lines. But can you talk about how, regardless of your budget size, you can still make an impact in some of the decisions that go into those?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, it's our 65th anniversary, and to a consumer, longevity is important to a franchise owner. It's crucial in terms of investing in a brand. And so as our 65th anniversary, Ziebart was founded in Detroit by Kurt Ziebart. So we have huge roots to the city, and that was really important to us this year to make a splash and make a connection back to the city. And of course, as we've all talked about, the draft was such a key moment and milestone for the city of Detroit that we wanted to make sure we could help in that celebration too. And so when we thought and talked a little bit about where we wanted to be from a sports marketing and influencer standpoint, to your question, my budget comes from franchise owners. So it is not a millions of gajillion dollars. It is actually fairly low. But I knew that there was an opportunity to make a connection, have a conversation, start that dialogue with players, with sports fans within our brand. And so we chose to partner with Mikey Santrasil from the University of Michigan and Kaylin King from Penn State. Those were very targeted conversations and reasons, strategies for doing that. We have a number of stores and fans within those areas, so they were already following both of them. We knew that they were both likely to be draft picks. Funny, I'll go to the end of the story. Kaylin was the second to last draft pick, and Mikey was 55. But we're both very proud of both of them for where they landed. We brought them in. We did content right within in-house. I'm fortunate to have an in-house creative team that is stellar to none in terms of driving content. We also utilized a partner agency to really create these conversations and relationships as well too. But the conversation and picking the right person, I think, is also so important in terms of how it connects to your brand. Like I said, on Monday, we're launching our first national branding campaign in over 20 years, including a new tagline and a new icon. And it's our 65th anniversary. No big deal. I haven't really been that busy this year. So super excited to make that connection. Our tagline is your vehicle's best defense. We defend your vehicle against dirt, against faded paint, against rust, your bed liner, everything that you need to make that vehicle looking like new for as long as you want to own it. Ziebart's doing that. So we know that the affiliations and the connections, specifically in football and with these players, were very strong in terms of also making their vehicles look like new and making sure that they look amazing all the time. They talk about their car all the time on social. So making that connection, you can see where I'm going. They're both defensive players, strong defensive players that have now been picked up by the NFL. We're excited to celebrate them and just really continue the conversation. But to end my point, I'm going to tell you that I have not even spent six figures on this partnership yet. It's far below that. And so we were really excited to bring Ziebart into sports marketing in terms of that opportunity now with collegiate athletes. They were both still collegiate, had just moved into pro, so lots of great conversations there. We loved what happened out of the campaign. We've not only received several pieces of content that we continue to utilize, but we grew our engagement by 400%, both on Instagram and Facebook. Our franchise owners are very pleased with the conversation. They're excited to invest more in sports marketing, whether it's collegiate or beyond. So it's an interesting level to look at when you're looking at the audiences that you're trying to talk to, whether it's consumer, whether it's B2B, making sure that the story is strong and connected to your brand. But anyone who's here who's interested in dabbling into any type of sports marketing or influencer specifically, you absolutely can do it. It just has to have the right message, the right partner, and continuing to tell that story. So that's a little bit about our story.
The budget thing is key, right? I mean, I think with maybe the exception of Casey running Rocket, we all have a budget to work with. And when I thought, my time in Shinola, we really started thinking about what we wanted to do with influencing and making connections into the community. The first thing when I got there, we looked at, okay, what's our core demographic? And all the data I had, hey, we are killing it with the 60-year-old Caucasian male. So just totally nailing that. So now it's, okay, that's great, but we want to diversify, right? The factory's built in Detroit, right over my left shoulder. We're trying to make this cool brand accessible to the masses. How can we do that? We started dabbling in, okay, let's look at what influences are and let's maybe align towards sports. And we started, because budget was tight, we started looking at, okay, how can we do these collaborations and keep these collaborations on small, discrete, but very measurable ways. And so we started reaching out, and we looked, because of our founder, he had connections with Jim Harbaugh at the time. So we did a fireside chat with the team captains before they went to the Sugar Bowl. So the year, unfortunately, it didn't work out quite as good. But then what was the halo effect of that? Because Michigan, whether you're a fan or not, one of the largest alumni bases on the planet, right? So all of a sudden, we can put a level of coolness, and our exposure goes in. Then we started thinking about, okay, NFL, a little higher cost, maybe we provide one thing I could do was give product. Super easy. You want to watch, here, have a watch. You want a backpack, boom, take a backpack. We couldn't really write checks for sponsorship. So as we gave product, it started doing a little bit of hit and miss, and then we hit with like Karl Anthony Towns, which was totally random. Would have loved to have gotten a Piston. And I bring this up because I also, while this experimentation was happening, as you get into the sports marketing influencing game, you are gonna have hit and misses. I'll vividly remember the year that Cade Cunningham was drafted. My boss and I, my CEO and I were down on the floor of the LCA, and on the big screen, Cade's drafted #1. He's walking out, and we're looking on his wrist like, that should have been our watch. Like, okay, that was a miss. So then we immediately said, okay, how are we going to be fleet of foot to work our way around? We accidentally, almost by happenstance, bump into Karl Anthony. He begins posting like crazy, and it's like, okay, wow, look at that. All of a sudden, we're hitting new spots that we were. We took a shot with Cole Caulfield, who's now who plays for the Montreal Canadiens in hockey. So a younger fellow, we went to the University of Wisconsin. He gets our product. And what I learned through all this is this generation of athlete, they are their own brands. And it becomes a collaboration, it becomes a partnership as they begin to expand their following. They can take you on the ride with them, or they could choose not to. That's going to be up to how the relationship goes. And so that was probably one of the key learnings in understanding this is like, okay, we don't have a lot of cash, right? How can we do this nimbly and quickly? And then the beauty certainly on the influencers that I've been, from previous influencing in fashion at my time at Land's End and Route 21, I learned that writing this was, 2014, 15, 16, when influencing was really going, everyone was asking for checks. I began writing checks, I'm like, never got that money back. So I began moving my philosophy a little bit to, hey, can we move these influencers into affiliates? Fortunately, what I found in this experimentation, the athletes are very down with that. Because if you can get the athlete to say, hey, I pay you through my affiliate program, I'll write you whatever check you want if you're moving units. I hate to cheapen it down to being moving units, but at the end of the day, that is what it becomes about. But taking them, having them understand this can be a mutually beneficial relationship. You can help me provide access into places that I've never been before. I can give you cool goods, you can have a great style with a great brand. It all works itself out. But my point is even regardless of your budget, experimentation and making those connections and reaching out and asking questions of these athletes as they start to build their own brand, you have a real opportunity to make a hit. And we were fortunate enough to hit a couple. And now that, with Legal Shield, I'm trying to take some of that playbook as we try in a more meaningful way, provide equal access to the law through our legal services, and think back to the heritage that I mentioned, the Fran Tarkingtons and the Roger Staubachs 30 years ago. What can I do to inject this into a newer generation by using some things that we learned along the way? Yeah, great.
I'm going to skip a couple questions just to be considerate of time, but it would be not my job, especially working at Nielsen Sports where we do measure sports sponsorships, but also the successful collabs being in the title. Jaime, the Pop-Tarts you mentioned was a huge success campaign around the bowl game. How are you measuring the KPIs and obviously the Can Award? So I'd love to hear more about that, but truly how are you measuring success?
My numbers now. Okay. Yeah, so it was really exciting. So when we look back, I talked about there's many different teams that touch that program, and we all had slightly different KPIs that we're tracking against. My team is all about collecting first-party data so we can reuse that in activation. The brand team is really focused on saliency, engagement, The away from home team and the sales teams are looking at sales units, right? We're all looking at slightly different metrics. And the great thing about that program, and I think why it won the Cannes Grand Prix for brand experience and activation, is because it really nailed it on all those different metrics. So we weren't just looking at one single element of this program. As I mentioned, they kind of all create this flywheel effect, right? When one thing starts to work really well, it starts to impact all the other ones. And some of the results that the team had seen, and of course I can't remember all these wonderful things, and I have my contacts in, oh boy. Okay, so we had brand sentiment went up. We had 14% increase in positive brand sentiment. The team was doing an amazing job of doing social listening through this whole time, before the game, during the game. And it was awesome to see fans actually starting to chime in. So when people were like, what are they doing? To your point, did they just eat that mascot? What happened? The fans were chiming in for us, creating this really positive brand experience, overall improving brand sentiment. Our purchase intent went up significantly, 8.5%. We had our search skyrocket up 7x. It was the highest our search has ever been on the brand since 2008, which is shocking because I don't know how many of you were doing search in 2008. We had sold 21 million more Pop-Tarts in the 8 weeks following the bowl game. And as I mentioned, the effect just kept going. And the impressions were phenomenal. You know, you look at 4 billion impressions, getting the attention of Jerry Seinfeld. It's all phenomenal when we look back. And I just want to build off too, the cultural piece of it is so important. Just 2 weeks ago, our team had started working with the Cheez-It group on another activation, and it was focused on Cordell Beckham. Anybody? Yeah, okay. I thought it was Odell Beckham, right? I was like, oh, he's a football player. I had no idea. But he had posted that doing a partnership with Cheez-It was like on his list of like all-time things that he wants to accomplish in his life. And he's more of a model and an influencer. But the brand team got in touch with him after that and signed him while he was starting up Love Island. And we were able to make exclusive boxes of Cheez-It Cordeezy mix. We sold it in 4 minutes. I'm looking at Masumi. She's on my team. She leads D2C. And the technology was there. It took us a week to get it up and running and live. It sold out in minutes, and it had 5 billion impressions around it. So when you look at the Pop-Tarts program at 4 billion, and you see what you can do in a week with an influencer, we think his brother may have also posted, that may have helped. But it's just really incredible when you start to think outside the box a little bit at not just the traditional metrics that we look at. You know, like oftentimes it's, okay, how's our TV scores? How are our digital scores? But what's going on from a brand sentiment and an overall engagement standpoint? And that's when you really start to see that groundswell start to occur.
We want to open up to a couple questions, okay. I had one more question that I skipped, but Rob, we'll come back to you. We were asking you about selecting those sponsorships on the front end, and everything we've been talking about here has been positive so far, but when you're in that process, what are potentially some of those brand safety guidelines that you're pushing up against, or trying to stay kind of on that front line, but also not pushing it too far? How do you manage that?
I think we've kind of all touched on this, but you want to be selecting partners who are going to authentically and genuinely love the thing that you're trying to partner with them on. A key one for Smile Direct Club was that everyone that we partnered with had to go through treatment. And so they were then on a 6 to 12 month teeth straightening journey that then as they were just doing organic posting or telling stories or on Reels, that could be part of their narrative. And there are a number of partners who don't want to do that, and that's okay, but that wasn't gonna be the partner for us. What it also afforded is that people could then, throughout their journey, hey, does that hurt? Yeah, it hurt a little bit, took an Advil, I'm fine. They could then tell these stories that we weren't contracting for that, but that was the added benefit. So it's not really a red flag, but it's hey, how do you take this thing that could go sideways and make it actually work for you? One red flag, because I was leading international Smile Direct Club, so we had 13 markets around the world that we had influencers and content creators within. Make sure that you're paying for the markets that you want to use this content and not paying for the ones you don't. And that seems like so obvious until you do it the wrong way. And that can go either way. So if you're not going to use this content creator in Spain, don't pay for global usage rights, because you're gonna pay so much more for that content that's never gonna see the Spanish or half of Europe. And the same is inversely true. Talk on the upfront if you think you might scale someone outside of a market. Have that conversation with their agent or with that team on the front end and either pre-negotiate it or just build it in, and then make a risk assessment if that investment's gonna be worthwhile. But those are things that can end up costing you a lot, or you just burn money by not paying attention to. We obviously never made any of those mistakes, but I'm just saying that you want to avoid doing that on your side. But the global usage piece, especially if you're running an international brand, can be really costly, and if you're not gonna use it, don't pay for it. So those would be 2 watch outs, but I'm sure you guys have even more too.
I'll just make a connection to culture as well, too. I really think, I go back to storytelling as well within this. Ziebart is not as well of a known brand. In fact, I often hear the term, we're the best kept secret in vehicle appearance and protection. That makes a marketer feel real good. But lots of potential. And so when we talk about that story and we talk about who we want to partner with, again, partnering with collegiate athletes who are about to make that huge transition into pro, into the NFL, is really at the heart and tells the story and makes a connection to what Ziebart's all about too. Our franchise owners, oftentimes they're single franchise owners who have walked into franchising for the first time, or drivers are now purchasing their vehicles, and we know that the average vehicle costs over $40,000 a year. So for some people, that's a huge investment, and they want to keep that investment looking like new, and protect it and take care of it. And so that connection and telling that story and watching that story through what Kaylin and through Mikey went through to go from this amazing collegiate career to this professional, huge opportunity, and right here in Detroit at the draft, talking about results and what happened there too. Conversations happened for days during it. It was awesome to see, oh, there's my boy. There's both their teams were in our feeds, U of M and Penn State talking. We had ESPN analysts talking about Ziebart for the first time. That would have never happened if we didn't do this. So again, that reach goes much beyond just trying to tell a story or making this cool connection for my drivers, millions of drivers in 37 countries that we're in, but it's really opening our landscape. And that's what we love about, again, finding the right partners who have that same story as us. We came from a one single product or service to now 27 different services with 400 locations in 37 countries. And we're just continuing to grow. So we love to tell people's stories who start from their roots as well.
And just to dovetail on everyone's comments, the one that's resonated me most is authenticity. Right, the one in my business, we for all intents and purposes, what we do is we sell an insurance plan. But because of that, it's pretty well regulated, and the regulations change from state to state. So as you think of bringing in an influencer to help you move that, the authenticity is key. So it's nice that we have this wonderful tagline of equal opportunity under the law. If your sponsor doesn't really buy into that, you're selling snake oil, right? So as we go through this journey and we figure this out, it's really important that when I was selling widgets for all intents and purposes at Shinola, well, it's easy. Hey, I have a cool product. I'm going to look great, all that. Now you're selling a concept of protecting your family. You want your influencer, you want your person that you're partnering with to totally buy into that. And I've always been a fan that when you find that authentic partner, they'll beat a path to your door because you've made the right connections.
Yeah, I think we're going to open it up. We have time for one question. Not sure how we want to run that. If anybody, please.
Kind of a collective question. I'm Jono from Karma Jack. Nice to meet everyone. So I'm a creative director, which means there's a lot of creative leaning people on the stage or floor, but on stools on the floor. But with that being said, everyone talks about the importance of failing, and in a creative space, it's very interesting and difficult to explain to people, this is a good idea, we should try it, when you have a bunch of people going, that's nice, this is our budget, and how we've measured this in the past, good luck, and no, you can't do that. So kind of a maybe embarrassing question, but a very interesting one, maybe for the room as well. What is an example of a time you had a good idea that failed, and then what did you learn from that idea to apply to a big winning idea?
I think we have time for one answer, so.
So I think I got it. So the, when I think about a failure, it goes, I'm going to go back to looking at my demographics at Land's End. We wanted to expand the demographic there, and our creative failure was, how are we going to do that? Of course, everyone's going to say, go younger. In the midst of growing younger, we came up with a wild idea of doing a photo shoot with Gloria Steinem. Awesome photo shoot. She looked fabulous. The pictures were done in black and white. We had her elegantly dressed, even though with Land's End, our real motif was sort of stretchy pants and turtlenecks. We were going another direction. We probably pushed it way too far, right? And then you put a firebrand like Gloria Steinem into the mix, you really probably have pushed it too far, especially for a company based in the Midwest, catering to moms with school children and catering to the 55-year-old Caucasian female. That was one, if I could get that back, would do that tomorrow. Like my time machine is still being built, but that would be one, But what I also learned from it, which I think is where you were ultimately going, is what I do nowadays, and have done really ever since, I basically put in some budget to say, this money can be vaporized. And we have to be comfortable with the vaporization, and everybody has to be committed. And then it's more important, I think it's more important for the creatives, is that you got to let them fly. Right, so I'm not really that creative. I mean, I do good stick figures and that kind of stuff. But like, I know how, I like to think I understand if I can let my creatives fly, they have almost never failed me. And if you give them a little bit of budget, I got to believe that commercial that was done for the Pistons was a little bit of a let it fly situation, because you just don't know how that's going to go down. Right, and that's the challenge with managing the creative process. You got to let guys like yourself go. But hey, I do have a number to hit. The last piece that I'll hit, because I know we're running on time, is what I've always found successful is showing the creatives how the numbers work. Because then they realize, hey, I'm actually adding to the business with this funky thing that I just did. Yes, it's amazing what you just did. We're going to actually give you immense amount of attribution, because if it wasn't for your creative, I couldn't be on Instagram, I couldn't be doing things in TikTok, I couldn't be making commercials that win ads. So we got to give you room to grow.
Perfect, thank you. And with that, we're at time, so we'd love to give a round of applause to our panelists here. Thank you.